It began on an unremarkable Tuesday evening. The kind of night where nothing seems out of place until it does. Emma had just moved into her new apartment, a modest one-bedroom unit in a crumbling brick building downtown. The rent was cheap, almost suspiciously so, but she couldn't afford anything better. Her job at the local library barely kept her afloat, and this place, despite its creaky floors and peeling wallpaper, felt like a sanctuary compared to her previous cramped studio. Emma unpacked her belongings with a sense of cautious optimism. She'd always been drawn to older buildings, their quirks and imperfections lending them character. But as she settled into bed that first night, something felt off. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, oppressive, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. At first, she dismissed it as nerves. Moving always made her uneasy, and the unfamiliar surroundings likely amplified her anxiety. Still, sleep eluded her. Just as she drifted off, she heard it, a faint whisper, too soft to make out but unmistakably human. Startled, she sat up, heart pounding, and scanned the dim room. Shadows danced across the walls from the streetlights outside, but there was no one there. She muttered to herself, probably just the neighbors, sinking back under the covers. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, more insistent, though still unintelligible. Frustrated, Emma grabbed her phone and opened the Notes app, jotting down the time, 2:13 a.m. Maybe writing it down would help her feel less crazy, satisfied, or at least distracted. She tried to ignore the sound and eventually fell asleep. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the cracks in the blinds, painting golden streaks across the floor. The whispers were gone, and Emma convinced herself they'd been a figment of her imagination. She went about her day normally, unpacking boxes and rearranging furniture. Yet when night fell again, the whispers returned. This time, They weren't muffled or distant. They surrounded her, seeping through the walls like water leaking from a pipe. Emma pressed her palms against her ears, but the voices persisted. They spoke in overlapping tones, some high-pitched and frantic, others low and guttural. Every now and then, she thought she caught snippets of words: help, leave, burn. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone once more. This couldn't be real. It had to be some sort of prank, maybe faulty wiring causing interference, or perhaps the building's old pipes were amplifying sounds from another apartment. Determined to find answers, Emma ventured into the hallway. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows along the narrow corridor. She knocked on her neighbor's door, a middle-aged man named Mr. Grady, whom she'd briefly met during her move-in. He answered groggily, blinking at her through thick glasses. She said quickly, "Sorry to bother you, but have you noticed any strange noises lately? Like whispers?" Mr. Grady frowned, his expression unreadable. "Whispers?" he repeated slowly. Then he shook his head. "Nope, can't say I have. Must be your imagination." His dismissive tone left her feeling foolish, but she couldn't shake the unease gnawing at her stomach. As she turned to leave, he added, almost as an afterthought, "You should check the basement sometime. Might give you some answers." The suggestion lingered in her mind all day. What could possibly be in the basement? Curiosity and desperation finally got the better of her. That evening, armed with a flashlight and her phone, she descended the stairs leading to the lower level. The air grew colder with each step, carrying a damp, musty smell that made her wrinkle her nose. The basement was a labyrinth of forgotten things. Piles of rotting furniture, dusty crates, and tangled wires cluttered the space. In the far corner, she spotted something unusual, a section of wall covered in strange symbols. They looked hand-carved, jagged lines forming patterns that seemed both random and deliberate. Beside them, scrawled in faded ink, were names, dozens of them, written in shaky handwriting. Emma leaned closer, her flashlight trembling in her grip. Some of the names were crossed out, while others remained intact. One name stood out to her, Elizabeth Harper. Beneath it, someone had written a period. Never forget. A chill ran down her spine. She snapped a photo of the wall before retreating upstairs, unable to shake the feeling that she was being watched. Back in her apartment, she did what anyone in her position would do. She Googled the address. What she found chilled her to the bone. The building had a dark history. Decades ago, it had been home to a series of mysterious disappearances. Tenants vanished without a trace, leaving behind only cryptic messages scrawled on the walls of their apartments. The police never solved the cases, and eventually, the building was condemned. It reopened years later, renovated and rebranded, but rumors of hauntings persisted. That night, the whispers returned stronger than ever. They weren't coming from outside anymore. They were inside her head. Emma clutched her pillow, tears streaming down her face as the voices screamed incoherently. She recognized one voice now, clearer than the rest, Elizabeth Harper. "Get out," it pleaded, "before it's too late." Panic surged through her veins. She grabbed her bag and stuffed it with essentials, clothes, toiletries, her laptop. But as she reached for the doorknob, the handle wouldn't budge. No matter how hard she twisted or pulled, the door remained locked. She frantically searched for her keys, but they were gone. The whispers grew deafening, filling every inch of the room. Shadows swirled around her, taking shape as ghostly figures. Their faces were distorted, mouths stretched wide in silent screams. Emma backed into a corner, clutching her knees to her chest as the apparitions closed in. And then, silence ... For a brief moment, everything stopped. The whispers ceased, the shadows dissolved, and Emma dared to hope it was over. But then she heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing from the hallway outside. Something or someone was approaching. The doorknob rattled. A low chuckle emanated from the other side. "You shouldn't have come here," a voice rasped, deep and guttural. "Now, you'll join the others." Emma screamed as the door burst open, revealing a figure cloaked in darkness. Its eyes glowed red, and its grin stretched impossibly wide, exposing rows of jagged teeth. She tried to run, but her legs refused to move. The creature lunged forward, enveloping her in its shadowy embrace. When the sun rose the next morning, apartment 3B stood empty. The landlord found no trace of Emma, only a single note taped to the mirror in her bathroom. Written in shaky handwriting were 3 words: "Never forget me." Downstairs, in the basement, a new name appeared on the wall, freshly carved into the decaying plaster: Emma Carter. Weeks later, a young couple moved into apartment 3B. They laughed off the rumors, dismissing them as urban legends. After all, what harm could an old building possibly pose? That night, as they lay in bed, the husband turned to his wife and whispered, "Do you hear that?" She shook her head, smiling ... Hear what? He paused, listening intently. For a moment, he thought he'd imagined it. A faint whisper, barely audible, but then it came again, louder this time, accompanied by a cold breeze that sent shivers down his spine. "Help us," the voice pleaded. "Get out."